Hi guys, welcome. And in this video, you'll be hearing a conversation between myself and a really good friend of mine called Stephen. And I've squeezed out about 13 or 14 amazing tips to increase our well-being and our sense of self-awareness. My favorite one is when he gives an analogy of the negative and positive stuff being like riding a bicycle. So if you want to go in the right straight direction towards your goals, then you need to use the left pedal and the right pedal. So you need to use your negative emotions to learn and grow and develop, as well as using the positive emotions to push you forward, to encourage you. So please enjoy listening, and don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and also follow me on Instagram. It's Young Limitless Podcast, all one word. Take care. Okay, so hi guys, welcome to Young at Limitless, and today my amazing, lovely friend is my guest. His name is Stephen Lew, and he is, I'm going to read it out so I don't get it wrong, the founder of the School of Positive Psychology, which is studying what is right with people. And so he believes we all have a light, and that he's looking at ways we can encourage or bring out the light more, which will help us be the best of who we can be. And he's going to tell us a little bit more about that now. Thank you, Stephen, and welcome.
Hi, Esther. Yeah, thanks for having me here in your show. Happy to be here.
Can you explain a little bit more about this light? Because you said that everyone has a light in themselves.
First and foremost, that positive psychology focus on the study of human mindsets and behavior. And as a human being, we have two sides of us, the light and the darkness. And of course, the light will represent hope, optimism, inspiration, and strength, resilience, and courage, and many more. And our darkness will represent probably sadness, anxiety, fear, and things that we are afraid of, or things that we do not like about ourselves. So positive psychology focuses a lot on the light, the side of things, so that how could we tap on these inner resources, these strengths that we have, so that we can shine even brighter. Yeah, and of course, I'm not suggesting that positive psychology is dismissing that the darkness is not important. They are also as important. So we need to study both areas. But I just want to emphasize that without darkness, the light cannot shine. So if you look out into the sky, when it's dark at night, we need the darkness for the stars to shine, to illuminate. So as a person, every one of us is like a star. We get to shine because we have this darkness.
Okay, so then this is the question I know young people would want to know. So when they have so much darkness in them, when they have suffered so much, and a lot of them use the word overwhelm, they're just overwhelmed with it. And they want to believe in the light, and they do believe there's a light in them. How can they, because they want to believe, how can they believe in it more?
Well, I'll break it down to two parts of my answer. The first part is when we look at positive and negative, people seem to think that negative is bad. So if we look at negative emotions such as anxiety, stress, fear, anger, jealousy, and so forth, we will like to think that these are all bad emotions. But it's not the case, because they may be negative emotions, but they do serve very important roles in our lives. For example, that when we feel anger, we may feel anger is because that something wasn't right. Maybe there's a sense of injustice. We need to stand up for it and make it right. And if sometimes maybe we experience sadness, it may be because that our moral code has been compromised. Maybe we have invested wrongly in a bad relationship or a bad event. So upon feeling these feelings, we will do a self-awareness check that should I continue to do the thing that I have done, or should I move off to another direction? So that is the purpose of having negative emotions. Where we focus on positive emotions, they are also within us, and we can build on these emotions, such as maybe our courage. And when we are much more courageous, we are still able to we will still feel fearful, but we choose to respond not with bad actions, but we choose to respond with positive actions. Yeah. So that back to your question, I just give you a long form answer that we can always choose what we want to focus on, and that would be healthier to do so.
Cool. So it's almost like the negative emotions, the anger, the pent up frustration it sounds like it's there for us to learn from, because it could be like righteous anger, or it could be that we've made a mistake and we need to learn from it. And so the positive psychology is saying, okay, be more courageous, because then that will help you deal with the fear, the anxiety, the anger, and everything, which will help you to grow. And that's how it helps you to become the best version of ourselves.
Well, many of the times we do have that inner voice telling us that we're not good enough, telling us that maybe we could do better. And these voices in our heads, or these narratives, will bring us a lot of anxiety and negative emotions. But what I'm trying to say here is that it's okay to have them.
Okay.
And because these emotions are real, but they are not you, they are not us. They're just a part of us.
Okay.
And their sickness and they operate like a compass in a map, giving us a direction where we should pay attention to in our lives, so that we can use it as a bearing of a direction to decide the next part of our life. And one good way to process the negative emotions, I know that Esther, you said about should we use our positive strengths or emotions to manage the negative ones? There's one way of doing so. And the other good way of doing so is by writing down the names of our emotions will also help us in neutralizing the negative ones. I will highly recommend, if let's take a piece of paper and sit down and write down your thoughts, write down your emotions, and write down all the emotions that you are feeling. And that will help a lot in the process of easing any sort of negative emotions or suffering.
So what if they don't know where to start with their emotions? Is just like a mass of jumble in their head. How can they start to unpick it and write it down?
Okay. Well, I will first and foremost, I will recommend just take a piece of paper and write down all the emotions that they're aware of, right? So it could be negative emotions or positive emotions, regardless. And after looking at that, just do a small little calculation of how many emotions they have written down. And the next step would be identify which emotions are dominant emotions for them.
Okay.
So what type of emotions do they experience regularly, right? So this is the first step of building emotional awareness, which is very important. And then the second step is when they find themselves in a difficult state of mind, okay, they can go back to the piece of paper and indicate the emotions that they are feeling,
Okay.
right? So they have built that awareness prior, and now they go back to the second time. And then what they can do next is to take a deep breath and do a body scan, scanning their body and feel and locate where is the tension or the discomfort in the body. Where is it located in the body? Yeah, and to know that this emotion, for example, if I feel a little bit angry, and then I go back to the piece of paper, I say, okay, I feel frustration and anger, right? And then the second thing I will do is that after I have identified the emotion, I'll just sit down quietly and take a deep breath to relax myself and try to locate what anger brings to me in my body. How does anger and frustration feels like in my body? Where is it located at? Is it in my stomach area? Is it my chest area? And the next thing would be, can I describe the feelings that I have in this body? Is it tight? Is it hot? Is it light? And if I am going to give it a color, what color would it be? Does it have a shape? So by doing so, we are describing the qualities of the emotion in our mind. And by doing that, we have successfully created a space between us and the emotions.
Brilliant. I love that. So that takes, for me, that takes practice, doesn't it? And ongoing practice. So I know for some young people, they might try it and they might rumple up their paper, scribble it up, or like ball it up, and then you have to try again and again. But it's never giving up, isn't it? Just never give up. Just keep going, because every time you do it, it gets a little bit easier, doesn't it?
Yeah, I second what you said, Esther. We have these emotions will come back to us again and again and again and again until we learn how to move with it. It's just like riding a bicycle. On a bicycle, there are two pedals, right? And in order to move forward, we need to pedal left and the right pedal. And the left pedal would be the negative emotions, the right pedal would be the positive emotions.
Wow.
So if we stick too long to one pedal, we will fall over. So we need
Okay.
to keep on going. Yeah.
I love that. I love that analogy. I can see that in my mind.
Yeah,
So
I like
there's a
that.
harmony there, isn't there? There's a balance of working together. The things you've talked about was anxiety and that kind of stuff. And I know one of the questions that the teenagers have given me is what is anxiety? Because I hear lots of people talking about it, and lots of people use multiple descriptive words, and so they don't know when they do feel it, if they have felt it. What I know that's like a whole topic.
Yeah.
How can they easily understand what anxiety is and if they felt it?
Well, there are many different ways to experience anxiety. One of the common indicators or the common signs would be if they find themselves thinking a lot and having excessive worrying. They keep thinking about what's going to happen. Is there something wrong that's going to happen? They start to catastrophize or magnify negative outcomes in their lives, and that is a clear sign of anxiety. There are many different types of anxiety, but anxiety is usually triggered because they have expectations of the future, without them knowing. So it could be they're worried of their examinations. They could be worried about whether they will do well in their performance, or whether would they be accepted in a social groups, or maybe would they be loved or liked by another person. So these are all thought related to anxiety. Yeah. And if you're going to ask me further, what types of anxieties are there? There are many different types, For example, if a person is worried about his or her health, and they're worried about getting sick, and that is also a form of healthy anxiety. But if the person keep worrying about getting sick and visiting the first doctor and the second doctor, and they still have that fear or anxiety or worry, and that is definitely a form of anxiety. Yeah. And
Sorry to interrupt you. Sorry, Stephen.
No problem.
So you said anxiety. There is normal anxiety and then not so normal anxiety. So
Yeah.
is anxiety part of everyday life?
Well, I would say that it depends on the dosage of anxiety. That is important. If let's say you feel anxiety every day, do you feel a shortness? Because when we feel anxious, there's a shortness of breath, and then at the same time that we feel that we start to sweat more, perspire more. It may affect our appetite and our sleep and our concentration. And if this sort of anxiety keeps on happening every single day, then that's not very healthy. Yeah. But if you feel anxious before a performance or examination or going on stage, that's perfectly fine, because that's like maybe performance anxiety. Yeah. But I'm not suggesting that that is healthy also, because there are people who have excessive anxiety in one particular event. Yeah. It could be taking the plane, or going on stage, or giving a speech, or whichever.
So then this is the other question then. The difference between anxiety and fear, and then they also said depression. So, I mean, is it like a sliding scale, or how do they all like snowball?
Okay. They are all interconnected. Pardon me, interconnected. So we talk about anxiety, fear, and depression, and they belong to the negative emotions, right? The spectrum, right? And there is a sliding scale, but they may be in a common band. Some of the signs may be quite relevant, but they might be a little bit different also. So for fear, the greatest difference about fear is that fear is triggered during an event when a person needs to survive. So it's like a fear response. So if somebody jump out at you at a corner, you'll be frightened. That's fear, right? And if you receive message that I'm spying on you, I'm stalking you, it may be also fear. Who's
Uh-huh.
this person, right? Who's this loony? And so fear comes from the emotion that I need to survive this. I need to run away, or I need to fight to preserve my survival abilities. Yeah. And for depression, of course, we talk a lot about, is related to a lot of sadness and rumination. And there'll be a tendency of, maybe they may want to sleep more in bed. They want to, they tend to be a little bit more, I want to say a word, but it's not really, they feel a bit more broody. Does it make
Okay.
sense? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and and they feel heavy inside them. That they are always burdened by a sense of a dark clouds over their head, and everything's feel heavier and slower. And that's also a sign of sadness and depression. Yeah. For anxiety, it's more constant because the person will be on the lookout of, okay, what am I going to do next? There's a lot of thoughts jumping in a faster speed in their head,
Okay.
and
Brilliant.
yeah.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. So
Okay.
there's three very clear definitions. Thank you. So the reason I asked it, because that was one of the questions, if it was part of everyday life, but then you said it about it being a compass. And so the young people wanted to know, I'll just ask it straight.
Yeah.
Uh, how come, so why, the, so basically, so why don't more people have a better reading of their compass? Why can't more adults give them a good example of how to navigate their emotions? So so the young people are desperate. They want help, but when they look around at society, they don't see much help. I mean, they don't see many other people managing their own compass and their own emotions.
Well, that's a
I don't
big
know how you can
question.
answer that. Sorry.
um, there are many people who are, even the adults, especially the adults, I would say, or parents, uh, because due to different generation gap and the timeline that they were in, they were exposed to different way of living. And I have to say that the older generation, or they are not really exposed to the expressions of emotions, and let alone writing down or labeling their emotions.
No, they're not.
Yeah. Yeah, they're
Yeah,
not.
yeah, yeah.
If I could give an example, being a man, when I was growing up as a boy, I think it's still quite prevalent today that many boys have been denied their emotions when they are sad, or
Mm.
if they cry, the parents, I mean, given my context, that my parents asked me not to cry, and because
Oh.
they say it's not good to cry because you're like being a girl.
Oh.
Yeah, but it's so prevalent back then, right? But
Mhm.
comparing nowadays, that we can be more in touch with our emotions. So it's a clear indication that we have came a long way in terms of expressing our emotions. Yeah. So
Thankfully. Yeah.
yeah, and if I can put a word out there for those who are listening in, who are young and in your years, I think you have the responsibility to learn to own your emotions and to teach the adults how to own their emotions.
That's great, because that's exactly what they say that they're having to do. They're having to manage their parents' expectations and their anxieties and emotions. Because one of the other questions is, well, what can they, when, so living right now in lockdown, how can they manage their own, particularly their mothers' stress and the mother's anxiety levels? Because the kids don't really feel it, the young people, but the parents do. So how can they manage their parents' emotions, so to speak? What can they do for themselves to look after themselves?
Well, the first suggestion would be take care of themselves first,
Mhm.
and draw boundaries. Very important.
And very
Self.
hard. When you
Yeah.
live with your parents, it's very hard, isn't it?
Yes, it is. But I'd like to emphasize that it is possible, even though it's very hard. Yeah. Of course, you may be walking in a landmine, you know, yeah. But at the same time, that there are ways to structure or the ways to build a boundary around you, and I call it a safe zone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it takes time to build that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So self-care is very important. You cannot offer, you cannot drink from an empty cup, right? So this, you cannot be an empty cup. Yeah. There's a lot of activities out there you can do, like meditation, mindfulness meditation.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, it could be a 5 minutes exercise one day of paying attention to your breath. And mindfulness doesn't mean that you need to do meditation every day. It could be being mindful of what you're doing,
Yes.
like
And
being.
also, sorry, I'm just going to interrupt. And also, it doesn't mean having an empty mind. It doesn't mean that you don't have anything. You just think of nothing. Because I know that they've said that before. And they said, but Esther, we're always thinking something. And I'm going, it's okay. That's what your mind is there to think. It's not about not thinking anything, because then it's more pressure. So give us a quick one line of what mindfulness is then.
Mindfulness is just paying attention to your thoughts and
Yes.
your breath. Yeah.
Yeah, which is it is exactly like you say it, but sometimes some people make it sound really complicated and there's all these elaborate practices, but it is doable, isn't it? So do you practice mindfulness and breath
I,
work and
yeah, I try to, not
yeah,
every
me too.
day.
Yeah, try to. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's many programs out there or many apps that you can download for these practices. Do check them out. They're quite really
Brilliant,
interesting.
brilliant.
Yeah.
I might have to check some out and just put some links in or something, yeah, to make it easier for them. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, that's the first suggestion. Second suggestion is maybe how about keeping a gratitude journal? I love this exercise. It's easy to use. Or say something that you're grateful of. Count your blessings. One good blessing that I just counted today is thank God it's COVID-19. It is not Ebola.
Yes.
So thank God I'm still alive, and thank goodness for the things that I have in my life. Yeah, so we count your blessings, because when you count your blessings, we automatically know that we're in a better place.
Absolutely. So that's yes, brilliant. Any more? Any more suggestions?
Well, if a fast one would be maybe keep, listening to music is really important, because I love music, right? I believe many people do, but the choice of music will impact our emotions. And I know that sad music pieces could be very alluring sometimes, very melancholic music, but at the same time they don't give a good impact to our emotions or well-being. So
Mm.
create a list of positive music, at least like maybe 30 tracks. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Feel good music. I love that. Yeah,
Feel good
yeah.
music. Yes. Yeah,
And
play
they
that.
might even do some movement to it. They can do a bit of dancing when nobody's looking.
Yes.
Get the blood pumping.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. And eat well, be well,
Yes.
And of course, yeah, there's so many things you can do. Look at your friends, what they're doing, and also look out for content that will bring you well-being and happiness. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. As we are talking about the young people and then their parents, how can a young person separate what they're, so if they've got a parent saying to them, oh, it's your fault, you're doing this, and the young person's being blamed for things that's nothing about them, it's their own parents' own thing, but that's what they're hearing constantly. It's your fault, I'm like this, or it's your fault, that happened. How can they you said about a boundary, but how can they reinforce that and make it like, so they understand that's their parents' issue, that's not their issue, when they just constantly hear it?
Mm. Well, I think it takes a lot of emotional awareness in the individual to create that barrier, right? And if, let's say, given the situation, the parent is blaming the child, if the child has the emotional awareness, then he or she can decide how he or she respond to the situation. And it's clearly that the parent is looking for a reaction.
Yes.
Yes, right. And if let's say that the child react to the parent, And then this cycle will keep on, you will repeat on its own. It's a vicious cycle, right? But if the child respond by saying that this is not me, I don't need to react angrily or being sad or being hurt. This is purely my parents' emotions and not mine. And this is not my ownership to take it. They have created a distance psychologically.
Yeah. It's almost like they need to write it down on a piece of paper, keep it in their pocket. And when they can remember, and they heat the moment, they probably won't remember, but they bring it out and say, oh yeah, that's what it is. And it's like, keep reminding themselves that it's not me, it's not me, it's them. Because sometimes it's in the heat of the moment, it can be very tricky, can't it?
But if let's say you want to, in the heat of the moment, it's very tricky, right? So you still get triggered, you still get angry, you still get upset. I'll try another 2 more techniques. Would be 3 techniques would be number 1, avoid. If you cannot avoid, distract, change the topic, all right? Or 3rd, confuse.
How would they confuse?
Confuse, because it's up to your imagination how you confuse the person. You can talk about something else which is totally not related. And it could be many ways.
So talk about anything else, just get them off that topic. But I think it is, I am really hopeful that this generation will have so much of a healthier emotional well-being. My final question, are you ready for it?
Come on, let's go for it.
If you could go back and tell your younger self, so when you were 16 or 17, one piece of advice about, maintaining your own emotional well-being, what piece of advice would you give that younger you?
I would say to myself that you are an awesome person and you do not need everyone else to like you because you are good enough.
Brilliant. Yay. Oh, next question, sorry. So
okay,
what do you
I thought
mean
that's a final question.
Yeah, I know. But good enough, what does good enough mean to you?
Something that you can sit with, that you're comfortable with, and good enough in terms of counting your own blessings. Yeah, because going back to the mind, if you ask ourselves that what's wrong with me, the mind will answer everything and give you all the answers what's wrong with you. But if you ask what is good with me and what's right with me, what am I grateful for, your mind will help you to achieve that too.
So it's asking good questions, asking like questions that give you positive feedback.
Yes.
Brilliant. So we are good enough because we have everything in us already. We just need to keep asking the questions so our mind keeps telling us why we do and that we do. And yeah,
and that is our light shining, right? So focus on the light.
Yay, thank you. I love that. You just made that whole thing come back full circle.
No,
So
thank
you for your time and thank you for sharing the amazing tips and techniques. And I'm going to definitely put some into practice.
Can I share one more tip? A fast one? Really, right. The first thing that you wake up in the morning, make your bed. I think that's very important. Question to many people is that will you want to go to bed each night on a messy bed or a nice looking bed? Yeah.
And when you walk into your room, it looks tidy, doesn't it? It looks different from being all like you've taken care of something, and so you can take care. Yeah, great.
Thanks for having me here. Yes.
It's very welcome. Thank you for coming.